South Africa, a multi-ethnic country with more than 11 official languages. The Rainbow Nation, as it was named after the apartheid in 1994. To the south, Cape Town, a coastal metropolis with a population of more than 400,000. A paradise on earth, nestled between the ocean and the mountains. But the city has been hard hit by a crisis that has catapulted it into the spotlight. How could one of the most affluent cities in Africa end up running out of water?
Cape Town will run out of water sometime early in April. This will be the disaster above all disasters. No city in the world has had to deal with such a situation as the taps running dry.
Day zero seems inevitable. Cape Town, South Africa say it's just 92 days away from having to shut off most water taps.
When taps in the Western Cape province are expected to run dry.
Une sécheresse historique frappe l'Afrique du Sud, qui vient de déclarer l'état de catastrophe naturelle dans tout le pays.
The Cape Peninsula at the foot of Table Mountain is surrounded by water. Yet in February 2018, the Premier of South Africa's Western Cape province, Helen Zille, announced Day Zero, when taps in the city would be shut off and inhabitants would have to queue up at water collection points to get their daily ration of 25 litres. How did Capetonians react to this shortage?
It's a heartbreaking thing. It really is a heartbreaking thing because a lot of us didn't see it coming. We should have, because the warnings were there from a decade ago. Some of the articles are even 20 years old that say, guys, this is coming. Let's see what we can do about it now. But on the bright side, when it did happen and Day Zero was a reality that, you know, one day you could wake up and you turn on the tap and nothing happens. I think as Capetonians, that's when the reality hit.
I think it became really real when we started seeing all these notifications about the dams being empty. And then the big buzzword, Day Zero. And I think that is what made people panic.
What happens when Day Zero comes? The moment when there's no more water, it will be unmanageable.
We were told by the city of Cape Town that we will face Day Zero. Everybody was scared, and all people were very scared of the Day Zero. There was a lot of mass education campaign around water saving.
Global warming is a major issue which cannot be ignored, and increasingly severe droughts are a growing threat on every continent. In Africa, Cape Town is far from being the only city affected. Yet even though it was narrowly avoided, the inhabitants of Cape Town lived, for a time, in fear of Day Zero. In order to postpone the date, the city was forced to impose restrictions.
We introduced 7 levels of restrictions. During the drought, we went up to level 6B, and at that time, you were not permitted to use more than 50 litres per person per day.
Level 7 would mark Day Zero restrictions, but what does level 6B mean? What does this kind of restriction mean compared to the average water consumption of a European? 6B limits usage to 50 litres per person per day. For washing up and hand washing, each Capetonian has 18 litres. In comparison, a dishwasher uses around 30 litres and a washing machine 90. That leaves 15 litres for a 90-second shower compared to 90 litres for the average European 10-minute shower. Add to that 9 litres to flush the toilet only once a day compared to 36 litres on average when you use the toilet 4 times a day. 3 litres for personal hygiene, whereas we use 25 litres for hand washing and another 12 if we let the tap run while brushing our teeth. Out of the 50 litres, that leaves 2 for cooking compared to 5 for a European, 2 for drinking water, and just 1 litre for your house pet. Why were Cape Town inhabitants forced to count each drop of water? Kevin Winter, a researcher in urban water management, helps us understand the reasons behind a crisis of this scale. It all started here, at one of the dams that supplies the city with water, the Seeswaterskloof Dam.
This dam was built in about 1980. It's the largest dam supplying the city of Cape Town and also the agricultural area around it. And so you can imagine where I'm standing right now, that water is at least another 2.5 meters above my head when this dam is full. And it was full. In 2014, this dam was 100% full. But when we were here in March 2018, we could virtually walk right across this dam. There was a small little stream in the middle, and the rest of it was much as we see around here, just sand and trees around us that are often obviously covered by the water. When you get to a level of water of less than about 6% in this dam, it has so much sediment in it that all you're doing is sucking mud and not any water. So it was just an indication of a collapsed system at that point. About 95% of Cape Town's water all comes from surface dams, and we have 6 major dams. So we are caught in quite a difficult situation of relying almost entirely on surface water dams. So from about 2015, we started to see signs of a lower rainfall, and that persisted with lower rainfall again in 2016, 2017, and again in 2018, in fact. And that below average rainfall in 2017 was close on 60% below our norm. Our population in all African cities, and particularly in South Africa, given our own history of the apartheid system, which prevented people from moving into areas because of what was called a Group Areas Act, now are moving into some of the large established cities, moving from rural areas here, and also from other parts of Africa as well. Over almost 20 years, we've had a population increase. The city has doubled in size. And as the city begins to develop and people move into a more middle income with formal housing, start to use more water as well. So it's a lifestyle that also increases the amount of demand and use of water.
Megan Bosland, a middle-class Capetonian, lives in a flat in the town centre. Amid fears of a water shortage, she reorganised her daily life together with her cleaning lady, Nossi.
With the water crisis, we are leaving more dishes so that we don't wash them so frequently. So I was thinking we can use this and then use this to water the plants with. So maybe that's a good idea. With everything that was going on, seeing people collecting tanks of water, seeing the price of water go up in the shops, seeing people stand in the queue just having 5-litre canisters of water, and even seeing the shops saying that there's a limit to how much water you could buy. That scared me. My husband went out and bought, I don't know how many boxes of 5-litre bottled water boxes, and I bought a box of the disinfectant. I know that the city of Cape Town put in place the water restrictions, so they were trying to get us to consume less. So I think we were definitely limited in how we could save water by living in a building in the middle of the city. We don't have our own water source. We have a shared water source. We don't have a garden. So there are many things that we can't do. Flushing the toilet with the shower water, not washing dishes too frequently, not even showering that frequently, and rather using a bucket or the basin to wash not doing too many loads of washing. But yeah, that's all pretty much what we could do. So everyone was trying to see how can they reuse water, because we don't have water recycling. When this term Day Zero went around, no one was really sure, what does this actually mean? And from what the newspapers were saying, it meant the day that our taps would run dry. While those of us that were fortunate enough to have running water. And it's quite ironic because there are people who don't have running water in their homes. And so what does Day Zero look like for them?
Megan and those living in the city centre avoided Day Zero, and their taps were not shut off. They weren't forced to queue up for water. But for many living on the other side of Table Mountain, in the slums of Cape Town, it's Day Zero every day.
Xa ndivuka kusasa, ndiyavuka, ndinxibe, ndizilungise, ndihambe ndithatha ipheyile, ndibheke etepini ndiyokukha amanzi. Suba sangihambe nkosikazi, suhamba. Naza kuha silinde wethu. Bandi chongile. Bandi chongile. Every day, every morning. Ndenza kanjalo ndithutha amanzi from etepini. I-distance endiyihambayo ukuya etepini inde. Ngenxa yento yoba asinazo itep endlini. Asinamanzi esezindlini, sithatha i-distance ubheka etepini. Etepini ndiyaya kathathu, ndisebenzisa i-20 litre. Xa ndingazikwenza washing, ndiyohlambela kufutshane netepu. Kodwa ngokomthetho ndiya etepini kathathu. 20 litre yakusasa, 20 litre yemini, 20 litre ye-washing. Into engabikho kamanzi yandivisa kabuhlungu, sisokola kakhulu. Kabe sithenga wosela. And then la siwakha phaya etepini sihlamba ngawo, sitya kuwo, siyasela. Xa ndibuya ndibeke amanzi ngeketini. Ndibeke amanzi ndihlambe ndigalele ebhafini, mhlambe just ubuso ngekomityi okwangoku for ukwenza into yoba ndihlambe kwakusasa. Amanzi ebeyingxaki ukuthi thina abantu bamnyama. Amanzi ebesiwanikwa ixesha. Kusasa ngo-8 amanzi bebecinywa. The whole day asinamanzi. Imini yonke asinamanzi, abuya late. So besisokola apha emini. But kodwa abantu abamhlophe banamanzi the whole day. Bayankcenkceshela, bayabhafa, bayapheka. Thina sihlamba ngeketile eyi-1, asinkcenkceshela sithini.
In the township, taps are often located far from the dwellings, forcing residents to walk far to collect water. During the crisis, the municipality reduced the water flow. In more remote neighborhoods, water stopped running. So the city was forced to reduce water consumption. Xantia Limburg, a local councillor who's also on the mayoral committee overseeing water services, outlines the city's plan.
In terms of the drought that we experienced, we focused on a number of interventions in order to manage the crisis. We introduced water restrictions and we escalated that over time as dam levels further declined. One of the other key things that we did as a city during the drought was pressure management. And this meant reducing the pressure across the entire water reticulation network. And so from a resident's perspective, what that meant was when they opened their tap, the flow of water from the tap was far less than they previously experienced. And so what this also meant was wherever we experienced a burst pipe and there was risk of water loss, we could reduce the pressure in that part of the water supply system in order to also minimize losses at any particular given point in time. So it did play a massive role in declining water consumption, but also most importantly, minimizing losses during a period of time when we couldn't afford to lose water.
The city was forced to take measures, but remote areas where water pipes are defective are often impoverished neighborhoods. In order to avoid implementing Day Zero, other initiatives were taken.
We also, as a further mechanism to reduce individual consumption, we increased the water tariffs, and this has been done also across the world as a further automatic mechanism to disincentivize people from consuming a lot of water in a period where there is water scarcity. Those two factors really impacted the day-to-day lives of residents because they had to now become accustomed to paying far more for water than they previously have. And I think that created a lot of upset.
Restrictive measures had already been implemented in 2007, and residents were furious at the rise in the price of water. In some neighborhoods, particularly the most deprived, water meters were installed limiting the consumption to 350 litres per day, regardless of the number of people per household. Even without having access to more water, the bills doubled. Mpumelelo Mlalisi worked for environmental NGO EMG. Its aim is to inform communities about these meters and reduce the inequality in access to water.
This is a water management device. It gives the households 350 litres per day, and it automatically cuts off and opens the next day at 4 o'clock. But from what was explained by the city, we experienced different things because sometimes we can run out of water because it's faulty.
But how can it double?
Yeah, it's strange. It's strange. Yeah, it's
like
strange.
People who use a certain amount, you pay a certain amount.
Yeah.
We get a certain amount, we pay for that certain amount. How can it double?
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense, it really doesn't. The position was the city was to educate the communities to use water sparingly. At the same time, the city was putting also restrictive measures. The restrictive measures were one of installing the water management device and also forcing people who have high debts to go to the city to make arrangements for paying their high water bills. The water management device, what we discovered is that the installation is happening in the poor areas only. And the communities were not consulted about the device, whether they want it or not. In some instances, the contractors that were contracted to install the device, they will go to the house and find out the parents or the grown-ups are not there. There's only a minor. They'll manipulate to make sure that the minor signs on behalf of the parents and install the device.
They installed meter box around 2009. Let's say I overspend the water. They will cut the water, let's say maybe twice a month. We don't want to suffer, so we're running away from the cuts. We haven't been told about everything. They will just come to our houses, put the meter box, because there was a point that people will just chase them with the dogs when they're busy digging, because they don't talk to us. They just do their things to install the meter boxes. So people were very angry now that why you come to my yard and do this nonsense. If I have dogs here, I will open my gate and then chase them with the dogs. There's nothing now. It was not fair because they were not telling us. If they were telling us, educating us about meter boxes, then we understand. But now they just put, so people lacking of knowledge, they will think that this thing is taking water more because they were not being told.
After the installation of the water management device to some households, the people ran out of water because of the devices were faulty, and some of the leakage also were coming from the infrastructure, which is old enough because it was installed some many years ago, and now it has outgrown its age. We are still going to have a series of engagement with the government around the water issue. The water is a serious crisis in South Africa. On the ground, people come together because they feel the pain and they are staying in the same area. They understand the crisis of water, the people.
350 litres a day may seem enough, but what about deprived communities where there are sometimes more than 8 people per household? Around 1 million people live in Cape Town's slums, but they use less than 4% of the city's water resources, compared to 65% for the people living in the city centre. It's not in the poor neighbourhoods that water consumption is highest. Cape Town is a city with many faces. Those who live in the affluent neighbourhoods are better equipped to deal with water shortages.
The veins underneath the ground, they flow in different directions, you know. It's a gamble. You never know when you're going to hit that vein. The drought crisis in Cape Town, it's the most, I would say, severe in the sense of workload, because it was the first drought ever where we experienced a situation of that there might be a day zero. In one recorded year, and this was before the drought, we worked it out to basically a borehole a week almost. When it came to the drought, we stopped counting because the demand was so high. We just drilled. We just went out there, drilled the boreholes, got them done, and just moved to the next site. I must say, it was one of the most tiring, hardworking, and scariest times to be in the drilling industry.
The water that we receive from the municipality is drinkable water that we also do services in that don't require necessarily drinking water. So we're all washing with drinking water and watering with drinking water, etc. So that was nearly made sense in a way that one should use water that's not drinkable, which is so valuable today. It is common knowledge that Cape Town underground has a lot of water coming off both the mountain and streams, etc., running into the streams and into the sea, and certainly the borehole will be used to do our washing, used for the garden, the pool, recycling, the toilets, etc., to save the drinking water.
You can dewater an area. For example, if someone had to drill another borehole in the area and just draw an enormous amount of water from that borehole to a sense of almost dewatering the area, yeah, you're going to affect everyone else's boreholes. It's not just a free-to-use system, you know. So it is up to the individual that has a borehole to adhere to the bylaws in our province of the water usage as well, so that we don't environmentally impact the other people around us negatively, you know. So it's the client's response, the customer's responsibility to go and register their borehole with the Department of Water. There are people that refuse to register. They don't want to educate themselves. They just purely want the water for themselves, for their house, whatever, and they even refuse to put a sign outside the property to advertise that they've got water. Because in Cape Town you have to display outside of your property that you've got groundwater, and the city is still growing, and we are still going to need other sources to provide water for the city, and that will be boreholes.
In fairness to the city, I think they reacted quite fast. Some people believe it there could have been more done, more taken a more conservative view, and people expect a quick fix. But the reality is that it always takes longer to make the right decisions, and to also ensure that the plans put in place are not again short-term but more long-term.
Groundwater, we believe, is a great advantage for us to tap into alternative water, but there is a major risk if it's not managed well. There's a risk of depleting this resource, which we have seen happen across the world. And so the city does believe we need to take a cautious approach. Aquifers are also recharged more naturally through rainfall. Well, during the drought, we also realized that the installation of boreholes and well points in residential and businesses were potentially going to be a major risk to the sustainability of our aquifers within the city. And therefore we made it a requirement for residents to register their boreholes and well points with the City of Cape Town municipality to allow us to understand where people were drawing from underground sources, so that we could have that necessary data to map it out, because we didn't want to run the risk of depleting that resource. However, despite the requirement to do so, a very small percentage of residents have actually registered their boreholes and well points with the city. On record, we have only around 22,000 registered boreholes and well points, and we are aware of the fact that there's actually so many more residents who have actually invested in boreholes and well points.
The municipality is aware that a large number of wells have been drilled, but it's too early to assess their long-term impact. Water activist Karen Van Zyl has been researching the city's underground network for years. She's been studying closely the history and usage of these water resources, which are not integrated into the city's network due to a lack of infrastructure.
The city was originally called Khamisa, which means place of sweet waters. You know, what happened to the water? And it was through that process of coming to understand how the city used to work and how the city could work if we were to regard those water sources going forward. We don't have a shortage of water, we have all this groundwater. And I mean, there's more groundwater available in the world than there is surface water. And Cape Town has this mountain that rises 1,000 meters out of the sea, above sea level. And from it, all the water that's collecting on it, which is about, in the city bowl itself, 1,500 litres per mean average per annum, then that percolates through the mountain and goes into the aquifer underneath and then issues in the form of these springs. So there's perennial streams that flow around the mountain from the springs, the natural springs that occur. Okay, so the water coming down this side is groundwater, and that's surface water coming off the top. So the two meet here. I mean, all of this water today flows in a tunnel underneath the street. We haven't used our resources correctly. The tunnels under the city have been in existence since about the 1860s. The British came, they came with water engineers, and the engineers, as engineers do, put it in a pipe and get it out of the way. We don't want to flood anybody, you know. But I mean, they weren't thinking about a time of a shortage of resource. And I suppose the technology and the way of thinking didn't exist yet about how important it was to, you know, get water back into the ground, to be able to replenish groundwater sources and for biodiversity and ecosystems. So we have this groundwater available, but we have completely misused it. We've put it into tunnels, taken it out to sea. Yes, all water flows to the sea, but usually it's allowed to flow to the sea and it penetrates the ground and feeds the trees and the flowers and, you know, cools the city down. But by flowing out in a tunnel, it's no different to a sewage works. And also we, you know, in many cases, a lot of that water was, and some of it still is, pure water that could have been used for potable purposes.
Cape Town relies nearly entirely on rainfall captured in the dams and only recycles 5% of sewage water. The water underground has never stopped flowing, but has never been used. This major resource has simply been diverted by tunnels to avoid flooding and make way for building projects. Updating the infrastructure is costly, which is probably one of the reasons why the city has always relied on rainfall. During the crisis, Jed Johnson, development administrator for a property development group, came across one of these untapped sources by chance. When the entire city is short of water, what do you do when you have too much?
Last year we had this severe water crisis. You know, we didn't have rain for ages for the past 3 years before that. And there was this big push from city to reduce your water consumption. And when we found all this water down in the sumps, we thought to ourselves, you know, we're in the middle of this water crisis, what can we do with all this water? Because we had to pump it out and all of it was going to waste. You can imagine, you know, you have big machines digging mud and there's this water coming in and there's more mud and you're digging and it's just messy. So the contractor, they had to build bridges and almost created rivers for water to channel. The water that comes into this building presumably comes from Devil's Peak over there. Obviously there's a ravine, you can see a cave, and heavy rainfall, you can even see a waterfall. So presumably the water filters underground, comes under these buildings here, and then resurfaces exactly below us. From the slumps where the water is collected, the raw water goes from there to the purification plant. And the purification plant goes through a series of filters to get to drinking quality water. And from there, the whole building is supplied with purified groundwater. The majority of the people who live here actually don't even know that this is not council water. People are amazed when they hear that the fact that this is groundwater and it goes through a purification plant. So it's been an education process. People often say, "Jedi, why does the water taste so funny?" And it doesn't taste funny because of the purification plant. It tastes funny because it's a new building. New pipes always give like a funny new tinge to the water. The city weren't responsive enough to come and collect this water. So at that time it was going to waste, and we're doing what we could do with it from a building perspective, but still 50% of it was going, you know, out into the sea. And at that time, Shelley got on board, and she really drove the whole SOS initiative.
So SOS was born really in the response to the drought. Lots of corporate businesses wanted to be involved in some way, but they didn't quite know what to do. So we were very lucky at the time that we met with Jed and Justin from Swish Properties, who at the time had hit the aquifer during their build and didn't really know what to do with the water that was gushing out of the aquifer. And they felt very consciously bad about the fact that it was just going down the drain. So of course we gave them that solution and said, well, we want to use it for the schools. We want to assist the schools with having water storage and the ability to use this water so that they don't have to switch the taps off in their bathrooms, that they don't have to only flush the chain when they go for a number 2. We could go and collect the water from Woodstock Quarter and transport it to those schools in need. We only deliver non-potable water, which is non-drinking water. So we send our tankers to Woodstock Quarter, they fetch the water from there. It's taken many months and many meetings with the city to get them to give us permission to lay the very first non-potable private water pipe. I think we need to look at how architects are designing new buildings. There has to be a grey water system included in that design. And I know it's expensive, but it has to be done, and we have to find a way of reusing every single drop of water that we get access to. Baths won't be in bathrooms anymore. I don't think anyone will ever have a bath again in Cape Town because we know it's about 200 litres. So we just need to find ways of recycling.
So if there's a hole in the pipe or there's a flange which is not...
This is one of the senior classes at Massive Babani School. We've been very lucky enough that Massive Babani is driven by an amazing principal, and he has allowed us to come in and do lots of educational programs with the children.
The crisis made it possible for Jed and Shelley to implement new solutions to address the water shortage. Would it have been possible before the crisis for a building to get its water supply from underground? Would the SOS initiative have been possible? The city was forced to consider innovative solutions. The water crisis played a major role in educating future generations on saving water and appreciating its value. Will education ensure lasting awareness among new generations?
We have a water crisis in Cape Town, so we have to use our water more carefully because we cannot afford not having water.
In our community, we have those car washes. So what I would recommend for those car washes, what they would do, they would like take a tank, and then when it rains, the rainwater is going to fill the tank, and then they must use that water to wash those cars, not the municipality water, because we're going to run low again, then the prices, and then it doesn't rain. Climate change is playing with us, actually.
There are many ways of finding non-drinking water, but what do you do when it's drinking water you need? Are there any alternatives to the underground resources? Patrice Boyer is an engineer specialized in water saving, harvesting and treating.
The problem we have in the world today is not a water problem, it's a salt problem. South Africa has 2,500 kilometers of coastline. There isn't a single coastal community that doesn't suffer from a water problem, be it quantity or quality. Desalination means removing salt from seawater or from brackish water. We do this using a process called reverse osmosis, which means strong pressure is applied to push the salt water against the membranes. You end up with drinking water on one side and highly saline water on the other. In fact, the water from the estuary is pumped and brought to buffer tanks. This water will pass through sand filters where it is cleaned. The aim is to capture as many particles and as much organic matter as possible. It is then filtered again here, where the particles captured are thinner and thinner. So the aim of the membranes is to remove the salt. This is where the drinking water leaves from. It circulates and flows here in these buffer tanks before going into the permeate tank, the outdoor drinking water storage tank, and then the municipal pump takes over.
You do the turbidity, I'm going to do the conductivity quickly.
What's special about this factory is that we are the first to do it with solar energy. It's a really ecological solution.
This first solar-powered desalination factory in Africa, where rain is scarce, seems to be a good compromise. Thanks to this alternative, the municipality of Witstrand, based a few kilometers from Cape Town, can answer to its needs in drinking water.
We produce more than we use. For example, when Beaufort West was threatened with day zero, well, why don't we produce 300 cubic meters a day? We could and then transport it by lorry and to Beaufort West. Why not?
The factory could produce 300 cubic meters of drinking water a day, but only produces half. Even if neighbouring towns like Beaufort West suffer from water shortages, the municipality, it seems, is making things difficult.
At my level, I cannot tell the municipality and say, OK, we're going to produce more water and sell it to Beaufort West. It's not that I didn't think about it, on the contrary, but at my level, it's not an option. In fact, I will put it quite frankly, desalination is probably the last thing we should be doing. Reusing water, treating and reusing water, that's what we should be doing. It's what Stefan and I are doing, in fact. Stefan has a tourism business, he has minibuses. During the water crisis, and it's still the case today, you couldn't wash your car or your minibus, so we set up a small water recycling unit to allow him to wash his minibuses. He had about 50 minibuses to wash a day, so that's about 10,000 litres. The water circulates in a closed-circuit system, so he washes the buses. Then the water is filtered and used again for washing more minibuses. There's always a bit of loss. We set up a rainwater harvesting system which feeds the loss. And during the summer, when it doesn't rain, we also recover the water from the air conditioning systems. It's a completely autonomous system. He washes all his buses every day without using a single litre from the town's supply. The water crisis had a negative impact on tourism, of course. The truth is that it made people more aware of the water problem. They were already aware of it, but this really brought it home. They were very disciplined about it, and it gave people lots of new ideas on how to deal with it. There are many ways of doing that. You can reuse water for cleaning buses like I do. You can learn how to desalinate water properly, better irrigation. And I think that this, what could be seen as a problem, can become an asset. If I were to build an office building, I would definitely take this into account. I've been using this system for nearly a year, and I've saved a lot of water.
A closed circuit is a good way of limiting water consumption, but how do you purify it? The Water Hub is a research, demonstration and training centre. This is where Kevin Winter and his students are working on ways for nature to clean contaminated water and to help restore the natural balance of rivers. And there's more.
Where I'm pointing to now, it's where we have an informal settlement. So this is a wastewater treatment works, which we are now converting into a water recovery centre. And the first thing we've got to recover is water that is very contaminated coming off an informal settlement. And we want to clean that water so that we can use it productively for growing vegetables, edible vegetables that can be used and proven to be safe to eat. Behind me is a series of biofilters, and they treat the water biologically through biological processes. And it's a combination of the environmental conditions and the microbial organisms that are helping to treat that water. So we're treating water without adding chemicals. And that's an important statement to make, because chemicals are adding to some of the condition of our rivers and estuaries further downstream. When the water comes in, it is contaminated with bacteria, with nutrients, and with a whole lot of other drugs and pharmaceuticals that we probably would struggle to be able to identify. What's it look like when it comes out is quite exciting for the moment. We haven't been able to measure at this stage some of those pharmaceuticals. That's a lot more complicated. What I can say is that it reduces the bacteria levels down to virtually nothing at all.
As it flows through biofiltration cells, the water is nearly entirely purified. This nutrient-rich water can be used to grow vegetables. While this system enables to save water by reusing it, it is still only used on a small scale and undergoing further testing. So what if a farmer has several hectares of land that need watering? Senyane Rangaka is one of South Africa's few coloured farmers.
In our past, people of colour didn't really have any right to own land, and so people of colour were then disenfranchised of skills. We lost the skills that we had with agriculture and with farming because we weren't doing it anymore. When the democracy came and we're now allowed to start owning land. My father, he's always wanted a farm. So he bought a farm, we sold up everything, we came to Cape Town, and we had to start from scratch, learning like children, from those who do know. Farming and agriculture is the cornerstone of civilization, I believe, because food does not come from the supermarket.
Farming uses up around 50% of the country's water. Drought is responsible for a loss in revenue of 7 billion rand according to the Farmers Union. It is also responsible for 31,000 job losses in the hardest hit provinces. Many farmers have been severely affected by the drought and have seen their crops totally destroyed. To deal with the water shortage, Senyane uses a particular technique called the one-drop system.
With the hydroponic system that we have, we decided to go technology, and that has helped us immensely to reduce our water consumption and not compromise the crop that we have. So with the one-drop system, it's hydroponic, and we can use exactly the amount of water that we need for the plants that we have in the greenhouse. So this is where we have our water storage with 20 tanks of 5,000 liters each. So in total, it's 100,000 liters of water that we have that we can store here. The water that comes from the system, it's pumped in through these black pipes, which we'll still need to lay because we're in between plantings now. So we're going to come in here, clean out everything, make sure that it's ready. And then we lay these thick black pipes along each trough like this. So it comes out one drop at a time. Yeah? So every little bit of water that is used, that doesn't go to waste, will stay in. The way that we do it is we study the crop that we want to plant. We figure out how much nutrients does that particular plant need at a certain stage, and also how much water does a particular plant need at that particular stage. So for example, if we have, say, zucchini marrows, I know that, okay, a zucchini plant will need half a liter of water. That's 500 milliliters. And if the machine, I know that in 1 minute it'll push through 100 milliliters of water. So that's a minute of fertigation. So I can set it and say, look, in span number 1 where I have my marrows, please fertigate 5 times a day. And then I know, okay, fine, my plants have gotten their 500 milliliters. And that way you can almost, down to a milliliter, track your water usage, which is incredible. It's unprecedented where you're able to really control how much water you're using. And the machine will tell you, today we've used 200 liters of water, which is brilliant, because that way you can control it. This is the answer to agriculture in future, where we can't sprinkle anymore like we used to freely, because you do that and you lose half the water. So with this, I believe, even without the greenhouse, the one-drop system can work outdoors, and it really will help farmers be able to control their water consumption. Because as farmers and with agriculture, we are the first to get hit because we use the most water. Technology is the answer. And if people are unaware that there's a problem, then they cannot be part of the solution. They'll continue to be part of that problem. And I've never seen a complete 180-degree turn in behavior, in people taking it upon themselves for once, saying, guys, we need to fix this. Not the government, not the minister, not the Lord. We need to fix this. And the way we do it is by saying, how much water am I using? Let me not use more than I need to. Now things are starting to look better for Capetonians. The trick is to keep the consumption down, to not revert to our old ways. And this can apply for all cities that are going to be facing this scenario very soon. They may not know that they will be, but when it happens, they will know. And then they will see why Cape Town had to do what we had to do. The main thing is behavioral change. That's how I believe we'll be able to beat this, if we can beat it.
Day zero was to be the date of the largest drought-induced municipal water failure in modern history. It's not thanks to rain that day zero was avoided, but because inhabitants became aware of the problem and changed their behavior by reducing water consumption by half. Our water management should be based on making a difference between drinking water and non-drinking water and the use we make of it. Do we really need to have our backs to the wall before we react? Do the taps need to run dry for us to realize the value of water? All eyes were on Cape Town, even though many other regions were dramatically affected by drought in South Africa and elsewhere. On a global scale, population growth and growing urbanization aggravate the problem of water availability and generate geopolitical tensions between states. Water reserves cannot meet demand. 97.2% of the Earth's water is salt water. Only 2.8% is made up of the fresh water we need. How about an international form of solidarity in this globalized, interconnected world where everyone would adjust their own consumption? Don't we all have the same right to water?